4 queens. I got 4 of a kind on everything. I gotta live like a king. Hey, catch this rhythm. You feel that? That's called playerism. I'm on the scene, a player clean, poker face, 4 queens. I got 4 of a kind on everything. Dig this, living elite. I don't feel complete without kicking at my feet in a Rolls Royce every week. Baby, this is deep. Listen close when I speak. I need to at least, cause I'm too much. I'd be a fool if I love him. You'll be a fool if you trust him. Here with my niggas, we keeping it gangsta. Yeah, I'm a slayer, I'm just keeping it player. I'm fucking her now, we're man eating it later. That's maybe why he is a hater. I'm wearing all black like I'm being a raider. You talk to police, we call you a traitor. I'm running the city, they call me for favors. I'm running the city, they call me the mayor. It's getting political with me, my street presidential, she give me the... Quit banging my line, ho. Quit banging my line, ho. When you see me act like you don't even know me, ho. When you see me act like you don't even know me, ho. Come on, baby, get a clue. How you do what you do? How do you fall in love with me, but I'm not in love with you? Peace to the saints! Peace to the saints! Peace to the saints. It's the big homie, the one and only. Today we have trending news, so we're going to go through the most important news clippings from around the world, the ones that are impactful and entertaining. And of course, we're going to make sure that we can relate it to your life, because a wise man is looking at the news to understand where power lies, and also to sift through the lies, and of course, see if you can make a buck based on what's new. I just got a news article here sent from one of the saints, Marcos, who's a Fiaishal, sent his Cash App in and sent in his article, which is right here. Let's go ahead and take a look-see, and of course, may I show love to those who show love to me. Shout out to Marco supporting the work. May I also acknowledge Anthony for supporting this segment. This is the segment of the intellectuals, and indeed, the assassin is the leadership class. Here we go. This news clipping is from downtown Atlanta, Sodom and Gomorrah. Downtown Atlanta riot. Okay, riots, that's interesting. Police release names, photos, charges of 6 arrested. Oh my. The whites are rioting. Something must be going on. Let's see what's happening. Usually this is the kind of thing we expect from the blacks after one of them has been shot by the police. This is curious. Let's take a look. So we got 6 whites. The first 2 appear to be females. The first one's a decent looking female. You usually expect ugly women to be the unruly ones, right? So the second one fits the description of whom we would expect to be unruly. The third fellow, he's a real savage. He's smiling in his mugshot. Not a time I'd say I was happy unless I'd been to jail before. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say he has a criminal history. This guy right here, bottom left, first one, he looks like he might be the brains of the outfit. The one in the middle, she has a little bit of tint to her skin. Maybe she's Native American. Pocahontas, kind of like... that white woman in Congress. What's her name? I can't remember because she doesn't matter. Anyways, and then the last guy looks like he should be in some kind of a band. Looks like he makes good music for some reason. Let's see what they've been up to. Now, also acknowledge Mr. Mind and Soul writes, Buzz Aldrin, second man on the moon, just got married at age 93 to a fairly young woman. You're never too old to get fleeced. Peace of the saints. Well, you know what? At this stage, he's actually probably making a good deal in as much as he ain't got much time left. And he's getting some of that young poon on a consistent basis. Well, I don't even know if he's beating it down. I mean, at 93, can you really beat anything down? But I'm going to go ahead and say he might have won that one. He might have won that, enjoying that last 1 or 2 years of life. Shout out to him. And thank you for the note on that one. Back to Sodom and Gomorrah, also known as Atlanta. Here we go. Atlanta police have released the names, mugshots, and charges of the 6 suspects arrested during a riot in downtown Atlanta. Firstly, I tend to think of a riot as something that involves a significant number of persons. If only 6 individuals were arrested, I don't know if that quite qualifies as a riot. We're going to see. Only one of the suspects was a Georgia resident. That's quite strange. So we got some import players. And when you have people who are rioting in a particular city and they're not from that city, then you want to start asking about funding. Who's paying for this riot to occur? So I'm immediately suspicious right now. Let's read more. Naja Gear, age 24, of Nashville, Tennessee. Madeline Fiola, age 22, of Spokane, Washington. Ivan Ferguson, 22, of Nevada. Graham Evat, age 20, of Decatur. And Francis Carroll, age 22, of Maine. And Emily, 37, of Grosse Isle, Michigan. Now, the curious thing is, with all of these 6 individuals, we find that they're coming from quite far away and not from one place. And so the idea, if they were arrested together, clearly they were organized together in some way. You'd have to ask, what organization are they a part of? So this is quite curious. All of them were very young, which would generally suggest, A, that they're unemployed and this might be their employment, they're being paid to do this, or B, that they might consider themselves professional adjutants, which is to say that they get paid to do these kinds of things. I'd be curious as to if any of these folks are university students, because university students are generally the folks who are most susceptible to rioting and thinking that they're revolutionaries and trying to change the society and protesting and engaging in activism. So if these are not student activists, I'd be kind of suspicious of who they really are and what their intentions are and who their funding source is. Let's read more. The misdemeanor charges include rioting, pedestrian in a roadway, okay, willful obstruction of a law enforcement officer, and unlawful assembly. I think the concept of unlawful assembly is quite a curious tool of the government, because what is assembly? Assembly means to come together. The concept of unlawful assembly is a suggestion that the government has to allow you to come together as human beings. This is quite a strange thing, particularly in a democracy that purports to be of the people, for the people, by the people. So even unlawful assembly as a concept or as a crime, more importantly, this is a very strange thing that I really makes me not trust government. It's an authoritarian kind of measure. So something to be suspicious of. Shout out to those coming in with the support via Cash App. May I acknowledge Johnny, who's very consistent. Thank you to those who really care. May I also acknowledge George, who is as well very consistent. And lastly, Jetstone, he writes, peace to the saints. Any advice for having a successful semester? Number one, yes, to do things in advance, which is to say, don't wait till the last minute and start cramming. Number two, realize that university is probably going to be the easiest time in your life, which is to say, everything you're being tested on, you were warned about. The exam, the midterm, the final exam, that was based on everything you should have studied up to that point. So you shouldn't be stressed. You should pace yourself. You should build in regular time to go to the library, and good habits lead to good outcomes. Wishing you much success, Saint. Getting back to Atlanta. And also, I find it curious that this was a protest in Atlanta, which is a very black city, but none of the protesters were black. So that's something also that you want to take note of from a demographic standpoint. Shout out to Saint CB supporting the work. So, for example, if this protest was occurring in East LA, I would expect that at least some of the protesters would be Latino. It would only make sense because East LA is largely Latino at this time. And so if people aren't Latino, and what's more, they're not from East LA, in fact, they're not even from California, you need to be very suspicious as to what's going on. Shout out to Joseph coming in with support via Cash App. Carrying on. So let me go ahead and show you some of these images. So I'll enlarge this. And when you see certain things like this occurring, you have to know that there might be professionals involved. So we see that we have a vehicle set aflame. We have some significant arson going on. One of those vehicles appears to be a police SUV. And this is occurring next to the West End. So this is a place where there's tourism and money and the business class. This is precisely the location that a city does not want this kind of thing occurring. Curiously, none of the persons arrested were named to be arrested for arson or attempted murder or vandalism or any of those charges. They may come later. The felony charges include second degree criminal damage. Okay, here we go. First degree arson. Okay, here we go. Interference with government property and domestic terrorism. Well, reasonably, if they're setting on police vehicles on fire, that sounds quite terroristic, I must say. May I acknowledge Jose, who comes in with tuition. Truly appreciate it. Carrying on. Okay, so that makes sense. Now, here's the curious thing: we haven't heard as to what prompted the riot or the protest. We have a tweet from a Fox 5 contributor. He writes, "I witnessed Atlanta police make a number of arrests. Blah blah blah. Protesters being zip tied and removed from the streets." Okay, this is really poor journalism because they're not telling us why the protesters were protesting. They did surely give them mugshots. In a press conference Saturday, Mayor Andre Dickens, an Atlanta police chief, said they'll continue to look for anyone who engaged in the violence. Quote, "My message to those who seek to continue this kind of criminal behavior is we will find you, we will arrest you, and you'll be held accountable." See, this kind of thing is never helpful, and I tend to get suspicious of both sides of the party, suspicious of the protesters, because when people deploy violence, either they're a very serious group or they could be anarchists. They could be funded, like Antifa, for example, or they could be funded by certain wicked billionaires. And then on the other side of it, when you see a news article such as this one that is so uninformative, you have to start to wonder about the powers that be and if they're trying to conceal information, and clearly they are. I mean, it just doesn't make sense that they're making an article about arresting protesters, but they don't say what people were protesting over. So I'm going to go ahead and just do an additional search real quick, and I'm going to say, what protest Atlanta about? So let's see what this was over. This is 7 hours ago. This is from Google. They've prioritized this particular result to the top. It's from a news outlet called CNN, which we know to be a very liberal news outlet, as is the Google Corporation. So they prioritize their buddies. The protest comes in response to a planned $90 million, 85-acre law enforcement training facility dubbed Cop City by its opponents, and just days after the police killing of a 26-year-old activist, Manuel Esteban Baez Terán, near the site of the training center. I see. So they're protesting a police training facility. Now, it could be a reasonable thing to protest in terms of the financial expenditure, but undoubtedly, cities need policing forces. Policing forces probably need to be retrained, around the world. Maybe not in Northern Europe, but certainly everywhere else. And I think that this makes sense. But the problem is the leftists, which are often extremists nowadays, is they want to defund the police. But they don't realize we've not defunded criminals. So whereas criminals are still well armed and sometimes well funded, the police are being defunded. They're being underpopulated, and so they're not able to maintain safety in our cities. And that's why we're seeing, increases in crime, particularly in liberal cities and states like California and Los Angeles, or shall we say, Atlanta. Carrying on. Thank you for sharing that news article. Here we are. First article that was on the itinerary: man charged in death of Oklahoma girl, 4, returned to state. So I thought this was an interesting one because who kills a 4-year-old girl? I figure there has to be a story behind it, probably quite wicked. Let's see. Oklahoma, man charged in the Christmas Day beating death. Oh, he didn't beat the kid to death, of a 4-year-old Oklahoma girl. He's been returned to the state. Ivan Adams III, age 36, was booked in the county jail. He was arrested last week in Arizona on murder and child neglect and the death of Athena Brownfield in the town of Cyril. Now, here's, my first concern is, number one, his name is Ivan Adams, last name Adams. I don't think this is even his child in as much as the child's name is Athena Brownfield. So that's red flag number one, which is why I often encourage both men and women to take care of their own children. We have so many broken families, and especially as a man, If you leave your child to be raised with the mother and the mother gets a new boyfriend, we don't know the quality or lack thereof of the boyfriend. And this is often what subjects your children, be them female or male, to sexual abuse. And this is the kind of thing that will scar them over a lifetime. My book is linked in the description, The Black Box. I have at least 2 stories in there about these kind of things happening to children and showing how it scarred those children for life. And in one of the stories, it was a fatal outcome. The young boy ended up dying at age 15. The girl was reported missing January 10th when a postal carrier found her 5-year-old sister alone outside the home where she lived with Adams and his wife, Alasia Adams. Now, the name Alasia, I must say, sounds rather African American. So, I mean, I'm sure it could be a white woman, but it sounds quite African American. And also, we associate African Americans with the lower class, and frankly, most African Americans are low income. So either he's with an African American, or perhaps he's with a lower class white woman, and he does look like a bit of a low class fella himself. Let's see. An affidavit for Ivan Adams' arrest alleges he beat the girl to death the night of December 25th. Oh, this dude is a cold Grinch. He didn't kill the girl on Christmas. What kind of gift is that? And later buried her on the property he and his wife once owned. Wow. The child's body has not been identified and was sent to the medical examiner. That's quite a gruesome thing. It looks like this is a fairly fresh case, a couple of days old, and not all the information is out. But one thing I would want to know as a man seeking justice is, who's the mother? Is he the biological father? And let us have that mother held responsible as well, because clearly she didn't report it. The mailman reported it, which would suggest that the mother was probably directly culpable. And even if she wasn't directly culpable, certainly she's indirectly culpable. That's unfortunate. Another news clipping: restaurant sign topples in high wind. 1 dead, 2 injured. Now, I don't believe in karma, but when strange, outrageous things happen, like a Denny sign falls over and it kills you, it makes me think, damn, maybe karma is real. What were you doing? You've been watching kiddie porn or something. How is it that the sign just happened to fall over? Because I'm guessing the signs are made strong, generally speaking. So if the sign was succumbing to wind, that's one unusual thing. Then you just happen to be in the trajectory of where the sign would fall. That's a second unusual thing. And then it kills you. That's a third unusual thing. This is a thing that either makes me think either, yes, karma is real, or maybe God is fake, because that is outrageous. That's a crazy story to tell, though. I'm imagining heaven is kind of like jail. When you get into jail, they say, hey, what you in for? You get into heaven or hell or purgatory. They say, what you in for? And you're like, you know what, bro? I was walking down the street, minding my own damn business, listening to my iPod, and then all of a sudden a Denny sign falls and kills me. That's quite a story. And similarly, in jail, when people are in jail, they tend to lie about why they're there. If they have certain charges on their rap sheet, and in this case, if you got hit by a Denny sign and you say that, people might be like, bro, you lying. You probably got killed doing some weirdo stuff. I wouldn't even believe it, me personally. Anyways, let's hear a little bit about this. Elizabethtown, Kentucky. A towering Denny's restaurant sign in central Kentucky fell on a car during high winds, killing a woman and injuring her husband and daughter. Okay, so the woman died, the husband and daughter lived. I wonder if was she maybe about to divorce this guy? Was she sinning against the Lord or something? The sign partially crushed their car when it fell on Thursday from a pole near the Denny's parking lot. Lillian Curtis, okay, she was 72. Okay, these were older folks. They were toward the end of their life. It is what it is. And if their daughter was in there, the daughter's probably at least in the mid to late 30s. Okay, fair enough. They gave it a good go. Next news clipping. This one is an important piece of a story. Right now, we're not getting the full story on what's going on in Ukraine in terms of the military conflict there. And we know we're not getting the true story because you cannot search anywhere on YouTube and see it read the following honest headline, which is Russia is winning, which is factual. Russia is winning. Now, at what cost? Well, that's a different thing. The cost is very high, particularly on the Russian side, whether it's lives, finances, etc. On the Ukrainian side, they're using other people's money, the money of other nations, our tax dollars, and the tax dollars from fools around the world are being poured into Ukraine. But Ukraine is bleeding out their blood. It'll nearly be a genocide in as much as you got mostly Ukrainians fighting there on the ground, and then you have a number of covert agents from the United States, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. You also have a number of mercenary groups from various places and private military, if you will, or shall we say paramilitary. The United States will not acknowledge this, nor will the American or Western media acknowledge this. This is completely dishonest journalism. And we know for a fact that there are a lot of personnel on the ground who are not Ukrainian citizens, but they're there fighting nonetheless. We will get into that. May I acknowledge Jose, who comes in with tuition. I think I already acknowledged that one, but nothing wrong with acknowledging it twice. I am thankful. As well as Justice, who comes in by Cash App, writes peace to the saints. Also, shout out to Mr. Carter, has sent through a link. Let's see if we can pop that one open, and we will add that one to the list as well. Now this, and thank you to those who support the work, because these are not the super exciting stories, but these are important stories. And Saint, who sent in the link, that link is not working for me. If you wouldn't mind, let's see. If you wouldn't mind trying to post that in the chat, I'll go ahead and pull that up. That's Mr. Carter. If you post your link in the chat, or you can send it to the PayPal email address. I'll go ahead and post the PayPal email address on the screen right now, and you can utilize that to send in your link. So go ahead and use that to send in your link, Saint, and I will get that story pulled up. Carrying on. Now, let's hear what the Western media has to say about the Ukraine situation. Notice when the Russians are making advances or gains, we're not hearing any honesty about the fact that they're winning. But instead, we're hearing about sob stories on the Ukrainian side, or we're hearing about new strategy, or we're hearing about weapons infusions or capital infusions into Ukraine, or we're getting to see Zelensky pleading with the West to continue bleeding their citizens dry. Quite comical and dishonest. But let's hear about the latest in the military-industrial complex, and we'll help unpack it.
Right, to Ukraine now, and Germany's new defense minister says he plans to visit Ukraine in the next 4 weeks. But
first off, why? Why is the defense minister of Germany visiting Ukraine? Is this a part of the defense of Germany? No, it is not. I wouldn't be surprised if the Germans have a historical, issue with Russia, being that Russia is essentially the faction that allowed for the defeat of the Germans during World War II when the Nazis were in power. But truth be told, the Russians are not currently a threat to Germany. In fact, they've been a great partner to Germany in much of Europe, namely through the supply of various natural resources, the type that keep energy in German homes and warmth in European homes. So they've been a support there. They have not been an adversary. So this is all quite sad to see these lies put about.
Berlin is facing continued pressure to allow the shipment of German-made Leopard 2 tanks to Ukraine.
Firstly, I think what Germany is doing strategically is they're waiting for a whole blockade of propaganda to form around them as a protective layer, so that when they finally say, yes, send in the tanks, send in the heavy arms, they'll be able to do it saying, hey, look, everyone wanted us to do it. Other nations pressured us. We were morally responsible to do it, when in reality, that's not true at all. And then secondly, this is only beneficial to Germany's military-industrial complex. And if you don't know that term, you should know it. And in short, what it means is that the weapons industries, the guys who produce airplanes, fighter jets, spare parts, tanks, munitions, all these different things, they like war. If you build the weapons of war, if you sell the weapons of war, you like war. And it only favors Germany's heavy industry that the tanks that they've sold to various nations are now being donated to Ukraine. And being that these nations are depleting their own arms stockpile, what do they have to do? Now they're going to say, oh, well, we need to rearm. Now, what does Germany get to do? They get to resell tanks to the same nations that they had already sold them to. And when you really think about it, you truly understand that these wars and the bad reporting and the propaganda in the news is driven by corporations who produce weapons. And these corporations are all around the world. And I want you to understand this. The corporations that produce weapons, they want Germany to donate their weapons to Ukraine. Here's why. If I sold some German tanks to France, for example, and France is never at war, France is unlikely to buy more tanks from me, Germany, the weapons industry. But if I can get France to participate in a war that has nothing to do with them, then France depletes their weapon supply. Now I can sell more weapons. It is financially beneficial for me to drum up war. That is called the military-industrial complex, and that is precisely what is at work right now. It's a very sad thing. And by the way, to the same who came in via Cash App, that was Mr. Carter. You can send your URL that you wanted us to cover to the PayPal email address, and those around the world who would like to support and haven't yet, you can hit that PayPal email address as well, or I guess just the PayPal link. Carrying on. So let's take a look into this one.
Recent talks in Ramstein failed to convince Germany to provide the battle tanks to Kiev.
Yeah, recent talks, but I bet my bottom dollar that Germany is going to give the okay and they're going to get those tanks sent over. That is my prediction, and I'm 100% confident. The longer Germany holds off, it's in their favor. Either way, they're going to make money hand over fist, and that's quite smart on their part if your only pursuit is finances. And historically, Europeans are not a good source of morality, and the Germans in particular surely are not a good source of morality. What can you do? I got another article sent in by Mr. Chapman, and this one is crazy. So let's just pause that one and skip to this one real quick. And I'm just going to read a little bit of the title. It says, couple RAPED'd and pimped out their adopted kids. Now, you should ask yourself, well, what kind of couple is this? Okay. I'll give you guys a little bit of time. Go ahead and send in your guesses. What kind of couple would basically molest their children and then sell their children's bodies to adults? What kind of couple? What group do we know consistently is disproportionately the group that engages in pedophilia? Yes. I'm not able to use your link that you sent, but I just typed that into a Google search, Saint, and I do believe I found the same link, and we'll go through that right now, that piece of news. And mind you, this is a very vile piece of news. And I want you guys to ask yourself, why has this not hit the big screen? Every time I present trending news to you, gentlemen and ladies, I always go through the AP. I go through trending news, what's mostly getting pumped out by the major outlets. This has been suppressed. Why has it been suppressed? That is the question we must ask. Adoptive gay couple. Now, I remind you, there was a time that homosexuals could not adopt children. There was a time. There was also a time when America lived by better morals. There was a time where there were lower levels of illegitimacy in Black family. There was a time when white families tended to maintain marriages. There was a time when women had higher rates of happiness, and that's because they were abiding by their nature, which tends into certain roles we traditionally think of women occupying. There was a time. Now we're in a dark time. Here we go. Adoptive gay couple charged with sodomizing their adopted sons. Now, first off, that alone is evil enough now, isn't it? Sodomy is a very vicious crime for several reasons. One, it's pedophilia, it's child molestation. That alone is evil. Number two, sodomy itself is excruciatingly painful. I've never experienced it, thank the Lord. But I remember I was dealing with this one chick, very thin, blonde, white girl, and she thought she was pro LGBTQ. I remember one day I was just fed up and I said, okay, well, let me try the old LGBTQ on you, love. Let me try that. I mean, I never seen the girl run so much. She just wouldn't take it. She's like, no, another day, another day. I was like, no, we LGBTQ today, LGBTQ today. She couldn't take it. It's not a good fit. Number one, anatomically, that thing is designed for one-way traffic. Number two, over time, the trauma to the sphincter causes one to be incontinent, which is to say that they basically defecate on themselves in older age. This happens to homosexual males. Number three, this is a child. So not only is that orifice very small on adults, even adult females who are meant to be penetrated, not there, but in general, on a child is very small. So this is a very physically painful thing, an evil thing to do to a child. And I really wouldn't even be able to tell you the punishment that would be appropriate for these devils. The punishment I would do to them, it would be medieval. Anyways, not only did they sodomize the boys, they also, and of course, see, I just talked about the physical aspects, but then there's also the mental and psychological. So the kid's going to be traumatized over a lifetime just from this part. And in addition, they're going to traumatize the society because they're filled with pain. They're going to express that, spew that out on the society. Furthermore, it says this gay couple pimped them out to local males and sent out videos of them rapeding the boys. Isn't that just horrid? I mean, so these boys are all these homosexual fellas are also engaging in child pornography. Full horror of mysteriously wealthy couples' sordid lives revealed in jaw-dropping court docs. Now, number one, what this mysteriously wealthy piece is about, I'd be curious. And here's the devils right here. I wish they showed photographs without sunglasses so that we could really see the faces of evil, such that if anyone were to encounter them, they might be able to do some justice. But let us get back to this. A mysteriously wealthy gay couple from Atlanta, shocker, who have been charged with sodomizing their adopted sons, also pimped them out to local males. Disturbing new documents reveal Zachary Zulak and husband William, give me a break, Dale Zulak were once the darlings of the LGBTQ scene in Georgia. Zachary worked for a local bank branch while William worked for local government, customer service center. How was the couple raking in $7,500 a week? They also built a dream home in an area where similar properties sell for nearly $1 million. Friends and relatives were at a loss as to how they made so much money. The pair admitted a range of heinous sexual crimes, including RAPE and forcing their young boys to perform oral on them after a midnight raid on their home, during which one of the adults was hauled naked from the house. Now, thanks to an investigation by Town Hall, what's Town Hall? It has emerged that not only did the sick pair abuse the boys, but they also were offering them up to other males. Truly vile. Hunter Clay and Luis Armando Vizcarro Sanchez were taken into custody on charges of soliciting prostitution with the boys. Wow. And here are the photographs of those fellas right here. Because I think, oh, that's so sad. Here's the boys right here. Wow. This is so sad and evil. Truly evil. Wow. So these are the boys who were being raped by the gays. And here are some of the gays who are doing some of the molesting. And here are the two fellas who are basically at the head of this. Now, what I would love to see is the society take this as seriously as they take the Andrew Tate thing, because with Andrew Tate, he's dealing with consenting adult women, and there's a complete lack of evidence. And in fact, in London, they put the case on, and we all know London probably has courts that are more just and well run than Romania. and he was found innocent there. But somehow, this story has been buried in the media. I want to see this story blown up. And in fact, let me see if I can tweet this out right now. This is just outrageous. Yeah, I'm going to tweet this out. I'm going to just put a gay couple charged. Here's my tweet right here. Gay couple charged with. Wow, this is crazy. And maybe I'll make a note of take this as serious as Andrew Tate, LGBTQ. There we go. There we go. I mean, that's the kind of information we need to spread to make sure that we're doing something about it, because this stuff is completely unacceptable, and we really can't keep quiet. And beyond, bringing voice to it, we also need to bring the iron fist to it, because that's truly evil, truly evil. Thank you for sharing that article. And I know you had sent that before, so I'm glad you had sent it again. And I'm happy that we're able to cover that. And it really definitely verifies everything that we've known about this group of people, is that they engage in this kind of behavior and they think it's okay. And all the liberal news outlets, this is not the kind of information they want to get out on the true inclinations and behaviors of their collective. Another saint comes in via PayPal. Mr. Toro writes, I'm trying to pursue multiple goals this year, like make 100K, read 50 books, lose my virginity, and put 15 pounds of muscle on. Currently, I'm in the process of trying to build all the habits necessary to achieve these goals all at once, but I keep running into burnout after a few days, and I quit and fail to stay consistent enough to build tolerance of pain. Any advice? Yes, I do have some advice. Number one, by your suggestion that you are, or statement that you're a virgin, I trust that you're reasonably young, which is to say probably younger than age 27. That being the case, you should have a lot of energy. In fact, if you're all the way up to age 40, you should have a lot of energy. So the burnout, I really think your mind is playing tricks on you. A lot of us, we never worked hard in our life. We really don't understand what that's about. So I think, one, you need to discover a new level of work ethic. I hope to be supporting that effort for you and many of the other saints in the upcoming days and weeks. And as much as I'll have a couple work sessions where I get on a live session like this just for members, might even do a few on the backup channel. And I'm just going to work. I'm just going to do work. Leave the camera on. I'm going to do work. I might periodically answer them some questions. I'll allow the members to come on screen. They can have discussion, but it'll just be structured time to do work. That's number one. Then number two, the other thing that you mentioned, which is curious, is you noted to read 50 books. I think that sometimes we get hung up on these numerical goals. Read 50 books. You should always ask yourself, why? Why am I reading 50 books? 50 books about what? 50 books to what end? For example, I remember when I was much younger and I was studying Ruby on Rails. To read 50 books was irrelevant, but to read 2 books on Ruby on Rails would have been really helpful. And so you should be more targeted. And so that might be where you can draw back some energy and reinvest that energy in something greater. Thank you for that question. And do know that once you get very serious and obsessed and intense about your goal, then you will have all the energy that you need. And Mr. Carter, I got your article again. I want to thank you for resending it. I see you actually came through on PayPal. I was not asking you to send in more tuition. I was just asking you to utilize the email address. I hope that you know that. I do appreciate the support. Popping in your link here. Yes, I did hear about this one. So let's take a look here. So this article is from the Los Angeles Times, which again is a very liberal news outlet. It writes, the headline is "Motive Remains a Mystery After Suspected Gunman in Lunar New Year Mass Shooting Found Dead." Oh, wow. That's curious. A deadly mass shooting inside a Monterey Park dance studio led authorities to Torrance on Sunday, where the suspected gunman died of a self-inflicted gunshot. Now, the first thing that's curious, Monterey Park, if I remember correctly, When I lived in Los Angeles, Monterey Park was a primarily Latino neighborhood. If I recall correctly, someone helped me out. So when they said that it was basically a celebration of Chinese people, I was kind of like, what? In Monterey Park? That doesn't sound quite right. The manhunt began after the shooter opened fire inside Star Dance Studio on West Garvey Avenue, killing 10 people, injuring 10 others. Officials are also investigating an incident at another dance studio that may be related. 20 minutes after the shooting, an armed suspect walked into Lai Ballroom and studio in nearby Alhambra, but some individuals wrestled the firearm away from him, and the individual took off. Okay, shout out to them. Authorities have yet to reveal a possible motive, saying it's a possible hate crime. Now, that's curious in as much as, number one, I did hear that the suspect, and this was before he was apprehended, I heard that the suspect was Asian. So that is curious. And then secondly, I think that we're often too quick to call things hate crimes. And in fact, I don't think I actually appreciate the categorization of the hate crime category, which is to say that if you murder someone, we don't need to figure out if it's a hate crime. It's a crime. It's a crime, and we have laws and consequences that pertain to murder. So I think the hate crime category really makes some persons and groups in the society a privileged class, and we really don't need that. Quote, everything is on the table, end quote, Luna said. Quote, who walks into a dance hall and guns down 20 people, end quote, asking idiotic questions. We know who does it. The guy that you found dead, that's who does it. Foolishness. Anyways, it says that the suspect was an Asian man. There we go, 5'10" tall, so definitely above average height for an Asian man, 150 pounds, a fairly slim fellow. An image showed him in a black leather jacket, beanie, and glasses. Witness described him being in a white cargo van. So basically, it's still unknown as to why he did that. Wong Wei, who lives near the scene of the shooting, had 4 friends who were there. And he was invited to go, but he didn't go. He said one of his friends was injured. So basically, there's not much else that's super relevant in the article, as they still don't know why he did it. But one thing we do know is that it probably is not a hate crime. And I think there's probably more information to be found, or the guy could just be mentally ill. But I do think it's quite noteworthy that he decided on a particular ethnic group, and he did it on Chinese New Year's, which is a very serious celebration among the Chinese people, in as much as things pretty much shut down. A lot of my businesses shut down around this time on the manufacturing side. So this is something that Chinese people take seriously, because they also take their money seriously. You heard me? And they pause their money and their business affairs for about a week or more. So that's something that is real. And so I don't think that he did that as a game. Let's say that. May I also acknowledge Walton just got him some more drip. Oh, and he saw it too. Yes, we have new shorts at assassinbrand.com. He just got those. I actually have those as well. I meant to bring them on this trip. I forgot them. So dope pair of shorts at sasnbrand.com. And I also have a sweatshirt that says Misandry. He got the exact same one I'm going to order. It's all red and in black. It says Misandry. And the reason that we have that sweatshirt is so that people can start to learn that word, misandry. A lot of folks know the word misogyny, but that word is often misapplied and overused. But the word misandry, oh, that one's not used enough. That's the one we need to learn, because that's the one that we're seeing coming out in real life. Carrying on. And thank you to those who support the work. Definitely do appreciate it. May I also acknowledge via super chat, we have Mr. Campbell, writes, peace to the saints. Major Mind and Soul, Fooly Cooley writes, are you familiar with the Zulak couple controversy? I think that's the couple that we just covered, the homosexuals. If I'm incorrect, do let me know. Mr. Johnson writes, would you get married? If yes, would it be her characteristics? Would I get married? If I'm marrying a woman that shares my nationality, then I for sure would not get married in the eyes of the law. If I need to get married to a woman that does not share my citizenship, then I would consider it if for some reason I needed to be able to get her to the United States and she does not live in a country with which we have a visa treaty waiver. We have a visa treaty waiver with a significant number of countries, mostly developed countries, which means that they're in Asia or Europe, almost none in Africa. And because of that visa waiver, they can pretty much book a flight and just show up whenever they like. So there's really no need to legally tie yourself together. So it would be unnecessary and probably disadvantageous. So I would never get married legally as much as I can avoid it. If I were to get married, it would be due to legal necessity. And so your question might be, would I stick with one woman and think that we're going to make it the whole way? And if I did that, it would be because of her piety and her ability to either accept all of reality or to ignore certain realities, particularly those with regards to male nature. Thank you for that question. Akeem writes, peace to the saints. In a recent live, you mentioned that now is not a good time to buy property. Yes, I actually have a news article on that. He writes, and that prices will continue to fall. Yes, I believe this is true. Can you share why and when you think it would be a good time to invest? Well, no one will be able to predict this as we don't have a crystal ball. If I could predict this, surely someone else who was deeper into real estate would have already accurately predicted it. I don't think anyone has. I think the real estate market will continue to tank, and eventually we'll get a sense of when it's bottoming out. Right now, I do believe in 2022, that is last year, we saw the lowest house sales in approximately a decade. So, in about 8 to 10 years, this is the lowest, last 8 to 10 years is the lowest sale rate of houses. So that's letting you know that we're trending downward, and the capitalist cycle is somewhere around that length. I think that we haven't seen the worst of this because there are a lot of bad financial decisions that were made, the way COVID was handled included in that, that I still don't think have really hit the economy. Furthermore, we're still sending tons of money to Ukraine. Then we also know that we're going to turn around and probably try to rebuild it. So there's a lot more in terms of bad government decision making that we're about to suffer, and that will cause the economy to falter a bit, and that'll cause housing prices to tank. And in as much as that's the case, that'll be the time to go in and gobble up yourself some property. Thank you for the question. Akeem writes, also, what are your thoughts on Biden document situation? I think that this might be something that plays into the hand of both the Republican and the Democrat, because I know the Democrats view Biden realistically as a weak candidate for re-election. He's presided over a very poor economy. He's had no appearance of vigor or vitality that we'd expect to see in a world leader, especially of the most powerful nation ever. And he's not created any pride in what it is to be American domestically or how the outsiders view us. Not that that's ever on the Democratic agenda anyway. So the Democrats need someone else that they can run instead of him that will be electable and competitive. So I think that they'll be pleased to utilize this to get him out of the way. I hope they're dumb enough to run Kamala Harris, because then we got a slam dunk. Even I can run on the ticket and beat her. So I think that'll be ultimately leading to him being unseated. Well, not unseated, but that'll lead to him not having a second run. Let's say that. Is it possible that his party is attempting to sabotage him in order to prevent a run? Oh, there you go. Wow, we're thinking along the same lines. Booyah. Sorrow writes, when you can, search up TikTok heating button. Okay, well, looks like I can right now. So I'll go ahead and pop that into a search. TikTok heating button. I just entered that into Google. I'm going to share my screen so that you can see how Google is prioritizing search results here. So here we go, TikTok heating button. And it says, so the first source is from Forbes, which I find Forbes to be a reasonably valuable outlet. TikTok's secret heating button can make anyone go viral. Now, we already know that this is a scam in as much as anytime something is a secret, but everybody's heard about it. Oh, go get some cryptocurrency. It's the new thing. No, it's not. Go get some NFTs. You make a bunch of money. No, you won't. Anytime you have something like that, we're being lied to, right? So for sure, this button is not secret because you've heard of it. There's a news article about it. And it really gets at what everyone, not everyone, but what many in this generation are seeking, which is to find a cheat code. They think life is a video game and they're going to find a cheat code, which couldn't be more untrue. And my hope is that those who are soaking up this ism are able to look at the world and see the truth of what is there. Forbes magazine news article writes, TikTok's secret heating button can make anyone go viral. I don't believe that. TikTok and ByteDance employees regularly engage in heating, a manual push that ensures specific videos achieve a certain number of video views. Oh, I see. I thought it was a heat button for us, the consumer, to use. Oh, it's a heat button within the corporation. Okay, that makes a lot more sense. So essentially, they're prioritizing certain content, which is not surprising because one thing I noticed a lot on TikTok is like, why are there so many videos of transgender dudes like trying to like fool like heterosexual guys? Why is that? Heating, a manual push to ensure specific videos achieve a certain number of video views. Got it. For years, TikTok has described its powerful For You page as a personalized feed ranked by an algorithm, which means not a human being, not manual. Okay, but that's not the full story. According to 6 current and former employees of TikTok and its parent company, ByteDance, an internal document and communications reviewed by Forbes, the sources reveal that in addition to letting the algorithm decide what goes viral, staff at TikTok and ByteDance also secretly handpicked specific videos and supercharged their distribution using a practice known internally as heating. I really appreciate you, Saul, bringing this news forward because this is really important. And I want to point out to you guys as well that I've been banned from TikTok twice already. And mind you, I wasn't banned for anything particularly heinous. In fact, I was recently had a video that had 500,000 views. It's a video where I'm basically giving commentary on an African baby standing on its mother's buttocks. It's very PC, no vulgar words used, no sexuality, no skin shown. And TikTok removed the video, claiming it was sexual harassment. Quite ridiculous. And you would think a video that has 500,000 views and tens of thousands of likes, someone would have known that this is not a bad thing. Should have been reported already before it got that big. I appealed, and this is the first appeal I've ever won with TikTok, but I say that to say there's something not quite right at the organization. Quote, the heating feature refers to boosting videos in the For You feed through operation intervention to achieve a certain number of video views. End quote. An internal TikTok document titled Mint Heating Playbook explains, quote, the total video views of heated video accounts for a large portion of the daily video views are around 1% to 2%, which can have a significant impact on overall metrics. They heat 1% to 2% of the videos is what they're saying. TikTok has never publicly disclosed that it engages in heating, but let's not be dumb here, right? All of these social media platforms basically engage in selection. They select what you need to know. They select the arguments you need to be aware of according to them, which is to say that these companies think that they're your daddy. They're going to decide on your values and views. And that's why often when I meet young women, they're completely brain dead and foolish. And that's because they've been educated in this kind of silliness. Carrying on. While all tech giants engage to some degree in efforts to amplify specific posts to users, that's quite outrageous, they usually clearly label what they do. No, they don't. You're lying, Forbes. You're lying. Thank you for sharing this article. We get it. Basically, big tech is corrupt, as we all knew. And it goes to every single company. Acknowledge. Josh writes, peace to the saints. In a recent live, you talk about intrinsic motivation. Indeed. You mentioned how you were great at manipulating your physique to get after it. I think you meant psyche. Psyche to get after. Oh, yeah. No, you wrote physique, but I think you meant psyche. What are some things you do to press your own buttons? Now, remember, Josh, what presses my buttons might not press your buttons. That's number one. Or shall we say point A, I'm very competitive. So there's nothing I hate worse than seeing someone I don't respect outperform me. So for example, I've been releasing a lot more videos on YouTube, and I'm thinking through my dissemination and marketing strategy because I find it quite strange and comical and ridiculous that a a pedophile with blue hair is outperforming me in terms of message dissemination. And so I've increased my efforts and increased my focus because that burns me up and disgusts me. And I think it's quite a sad thing for society. So I want to compete and I want to win. I'm a competitor. So that's one of the things that pushes me forward. Also, when I watch boxing, for some reason, like when I'm watching it, I feel like I'm in it. And so if I've spent a day watching a number of classic boxing matches or even new boxing matches, that makes me more intense in the gym and it makes me more likely to work out. So those are the kinds of things that I utilize to push my buttons. But the key is understanding the self. That's why we have the three sentence Bible, which you must remember and reference constantly. Number one, be yourself. Number two, be good to yourself. Number three, be good to good people. Number one is the most important key, which is be yourself. And to be yourself, you have to know yourself. And that's where most are falling flat, is that they don't know themselves. They don't understand the self. And I think we'll be able to help you soon because we'll be going through morning meditation and I'll be, kind of showing how I go about it. Shout out to Jonathan. He writes, won my first amateur fight yesterday. Congratulations. I saw you got a belt. That's really cool, man. I love to get belts. I remember when I would win my amateur matches, they give you a little statue or they'll give you a medallion. I'm like, nah, I need the belts. I saw you got the belt. That was a lovely thing. I also saw you had some good head movement. You're looking very elusive out there. He writes, your motivation replayed in my mind and kept me training even when my body didn't want to. Peace to the saints. Yes, and most of the time it's your mind that doesn't want to. You feel me? May all the saints congratulate the gentleman on his win. Shout out to the Assassin Savages. Mr. Yusuf writes, Marquette, hope all has been well. Hello, Assassin. All has been wonderfully well. And I think that's a mindset. We always can choose what we focus on. And one thing I'm working on intensely is to get back more of my time to optimize my businesses, to multiply my impact. And that takes a lot of effort and energy, but I'm working on it. And another thing I want you all to remember, and this came to me this morning, and I was going to share it in a post, but I'll share it now. And the idea is to trust mind over heart or mind over emotion. People say trust your gut. No, trust your mind, trust your brain, and trust the script. Stick to the script. If you got a good script, stick to it. And what I mean is this. I woke up. Now, mind you, I almost never have dreams. When I don't get enough sleep, I tend to have dreams. I never have dreams unless I'm very, very deprived on sleep. And I've been fairly deprived on sleep due to traveling so many time zones and then conducting meetings around the clock in different time zones from this time zone in different time zones. So anyways, I'd had some dreams. And I'd woke up essentially feeling like, I should reach out to fill in the blank person who is in my family. And that was my heart telling me that because the individual's birthday was recent and I didn't acknowledge their birthday. I don't celebrate birthdays, but I didn't acknowledge it. And my heart was saying, go ahead, reach out to them. But then my brain said, no, 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 no. Three sentence Bible. Be yourself. Be good to yourself. Be good to good people. Is this a good person? Last time you talked to this person on your birthday, they asked you to borrow money. And you gave them the money. They said they'd give it back to you. They never gave it back to you. You didn't expect it. It's fine. But all the same, the personality who's going to ask you to borrow money on your birthday, that's probably not a good person. They also have a track record of not being a good person. So though the heart yearns for this kind of nostalgic thing, the brain knows better. And I went with my brain. And I was very thankful and I felt stronger. You always feel greater when you let the mind triumph over the emotions. And that's a beautiful thing. So I felt really good about that. I just want to encourage you all to not succumb to that kind of weakness, especially if you are a man. That is not for us to suffer. Shorty said, TikTok is low-key the devil. Oh, I agree. Drug Hours writes, peace of the saints. I sent the pictures via IG. Thanks for all you do, Quay. Indeed. Let's take a look. Saint is working on a product. And shout out to the saints who have had their consultations. They take the information and they get straight away to hustling. Okay, so I'm looking at this right now, and it doesn't quite look like the same texture, and it doesn't have the same gleam as the fabric that I've been using, which is a velvet. This is a velour, but it still might be player, though. So, yeah, send me a medium. I'll send you the address. You can send over a medium. It'll take a little while for me to get my hands on it. I'll take a look at it. But the velvet has a glimmer to it, a shine. And that's kind of what makes the piece super player. That's not velvet, that's velour. And I know that you know that, but I'd probably go with velvet, especially for the sweatshirt. For the hoodie, I think velour can be fine, but we'll take a look at a piece in medium. If you have two different colors, send two different colors, and I will get you the address. So once we get off of here, send me another IG, just reminding me, hey, I need that address to mail the pieces. Ghost writes, I am talking to this South African female, and we played two truths, one lie. She said she had a threesome with two men. Oh gosh. That's not a threesome. That's a train. Choo choo. Oh, that's a pity, man. These South African chicks. Ooh, I'm still out here. You heard me? I still got to deal with them. So I ain't going to comment, but read what he said. He writes, she likes Mopani worms and she loves snakes. Turns out she hates snakes. Got you. Here's the thing. Oh, I got you. I get it. Yeah, that's hilarious, bruh. Wow. Had a threesome with two guys. Look, bruh. In general, use a condom. In South Africa, always use a condom. And look, bruh, I'm going to tell you this. Actually, I'm going to have to keep this as a player story. I just recorded a player story today. I'm going to be uploading that one. So I already got that one recorded. That one's done. I got a couple other player stories for the members at patreon.com/thesaintthecenter. Which obviously I have to put this up for the members because, my stories are true stories. But you're going to want to hear these stories. You're going to want to hear these stories. Let's say that. Be careful, especially with this one. She dangerous. She reckless out here. I just don't understand how that could be pleasurable. That's definitely a psychological thing. And we all have to know that societies throughout the world, in every racial group, every ethnic group, have always tried to keep under control the female sexuality, especially that of the harlot, because it is dangerous to the society. And just to talk a little bit of truth to you, I mean, we are talking trending news. The HIV/AIDS prevalence in South Africa is about 18%. And, the estimations vary, but it's somewhere around 18%, which means if you meet 10 persons, 2 of them have HIV/AIDS, which is an astronomical number, especially when you consider the fact that South Africa is a relatively wealthy country. And so you have a lot of other countries that are poor, have similar rates. They're poor countries, they're small countries, they're irrelevant countries. They might have similar rates. Now, this is astronomical and doesn't make any sense for a country this wealthy. Another strange situation is Botswana, which has a stable democracy and a pretty good economy and decent per capita income. They also have a very high rate. And so they're similar to South Africa. They're at 18 to 20%, which means out of 10 persons, if you meet 10 persons, 2 of them have HIV/AIDS. Now, here's the thing. I do believe that part of it is poor government, part of it is backwardness and culture, and the last part of it is some evilness. And it undoubtedly has to be evil because I'm here in South Africa. I've been to South Africa before in Joburg. I'm here in Cape Town. I think they're a little bit more aware in Joburg, but in Cape Town, you never see any billboards or adverts that say, hey, use a condom. So that lets you know that there's kind of something strange going on. And I might talk a little bit more about that on a separate vlog that I'll be doing on the backup channel, just about my experience here in South Africa. And it's really particularly dangerous because I'll tell you, of the women on the planet Earth, the South African women they are marvelous. They are marvelous. And I really mean that. I'm not talking about the white girls. The white girls is they probably bad, but the black girls is so bad. The white girls be looking just dirt. The white girls look like dirt when they be next to them, because you look at the black girls like, Lord Jesus, how is your stomach that skinny and the rump is that big? Lord Jesus. And the knockers too. No, the knockers are there. It's all natural. It's organic. Oh, the yammies are organic. Oh, Lord, I'm going to die here. And why is that white girl standing next to you? White girl, get out of here. You look bad next to her. The white girls look so frail out here because the black girls are so thick. And then you got the colored girls. And they be extraordinary too, man. It's crazy out here. I'm not saying every black chick is thick. I'm saying a good solid 30% of them are just tremendo. Like, you just like, what? Whew. So look, man, it's hard out here for a Pete. Carrying on. Thank you for that question, Saint. And thank you to the real men who stand up, who pay what they owe, who support the work. You are appreciated. Carrying on. And look, I done been around the whole world, man, in terms of like these bodies, South Africa ranked number one. I don't care what nobody say. They're number one. In terms of faces and femininity and demeanor, I like Ethiopia a lot. In terms of you want a bad white girl, I like Poland a lot. I like Ukraine a lot. Generally, Eastern Europe is cool. In terms of chicks that are busted, go to Hungary, go to the UK. Busted. You heard me? But hey, it is what it is. Not everybody can be blessed. There's diversity. By PayPal, Mr. Toro writes, to address your point about my goal of reading 50 books, I wanted to ask if I'm someone that doesn't have a lot of general knowledge and doesn't know much about the world, should I be reading books about economics, politics, world history, technology, etc., even if they don't have much to do with my health, wealth, relationship goals? Absolutely not. That is a total waste of time. No one gets well compensated for having general knowledge. We are in the era of the specialist. People get compensated very well for being specialized and mastering something. So I highly recommend against splitting your attention and being good at a bunch of things. Self-proclaimed writes, Peace of the Saints. The first rule of the 3-sentence Bible, be yourself. How would one go about finding out who he is, and what advice would you give someone that is in a well-paying job that hates it? Well, number one, I would make a list of the things that I enjoy. And I'd try to be fairly exhaustive. And I'd make that long list. And then I would go through that list and ask which of these things involve a skill that is a skill for which I can be paid because it's a rare skill or it's a very profitable skill or talent. Things I enjoy, things that I'm skilled at that are profitable. And then here's another way to formulate that question in your head if you want to be a money maker is, what is something I can do that other people like to see me do or hear me do or experience me do, or they ask me to do for them? What is that thing? That's generally the thing that you'll get paid for. For example, just this week, I got an email from a woman who runs a very significant organization that raises a lot of money. And she said, hey, Marquette, can you host this event for us? Would you be willing to MC it? And of course, being the MC of the event involves charming, wealthy people speaking their language and giving a speech and, making sure that there's this sentimental, facade over the entire event that's going to get people to open up the checkbook. And you have to have sales skills. And so people often ask me to speak. And when I get asked to speak, they're cutting serious checks, right? So I know that that's a major skill of mine. People are going to cut a big check just for me to talk because I do this at a world-class level. And that's why sometimes you have haters like, well, why does he expect people to send in tuition? Well, I expect you to send in tuition because if I give an hour of my time, people are going to write me a $13,000 check in the real world, you see. So it makes sense that we continue this. I'm not getting $13,000. I can go to live for a whole month on YouTube and I'd go live for 2 months on YouTube, 3 months on YouTube and wouldn't get 13,000. But I do expect that people send what they can to show respect for a master at work. I am a master when it comes to being a wordsmith. And I want all of you to be proud of yourself and also acknowledge the truth. And that if you are the best at what you do, there's nothing wrong to say so. It is what it is. When Floyd Mayweather says he's the best ever, it is what it is. He that guy. Same thing with Jordan. He said he the best. It is what it is. And the thing is, when you know you're the best, it's undeniable. You feel what I'm saying? So that's my advice to you in terms of figuring out what you can do instead of this high-paying job that makes you unhappy. And know this, you probably haven't read my book, which is called The Black Box. And in that book, I had a job that I hated. And I highly advise you read that book and you read through that story about that job that I hated. It was actually making me sick, literally, in a physical sense. I didn't write about that in the book because I don't really like to get into health issues because low-key nobody cares and they ain't a doctor, they ain't gonna heal you. But it was making me physically sick. I advise you get out of a situation like that, like it's a burning building. But if you need something to stir your emotions, get The Black Box on Amazon, or you can get a low-cost copy at marquettism.com. And you read those chapters about that job that I hated that was making me sick, and then you take action after that. Thank you for your question. May I acknowledge via Cash App, Jose came back. He writes, thoughts on USA reaching 31 trillion in 31 trillion debt limit. I think that Americans won't really have a sense of the blunders of the government until people start dying from it. Americans are sleepwalkers. We do have decent standards, but our standards have been lowering over time. Mr. Browder comes in by Cash App, writes Peace of the Saints, best segment on the platform. Thank you. I appreciate that. Tia writes Peace to the Saints. Appreciate you, Tia. Shout out to the Lady Saints. Teddy writes Peace of the Saints. Are you checking out any Amapiano clubs in South Africa? Not currently. Not currently. If you have some recommendations, perhaps send that over. I'm not familiar with it. I must say I have been keeping busy with good things. I've been keeping busy with good things, if you understand. Oz comes in, via PayPal. Oz writes, Trey's sent you. He writes Peace of the Saints. Sorry about that. Thank you for the support. And we are carrying on. So back to the Ukraine deception, shall we say. Self-proclaimed right comes in with the support. Truly appreciate it. And he writes, how did you become a good wordsmith? I read your book a few months ago, but I see I need to, you need to reread that part about the job that I quit and then went into entrepreneurship. I'm not saying you need to go into entrepreneurship, but I'm saying that will give you the motivation. Read it and feel the pain there. By the way, shout out to the ballers. Kahito Hoon writes, Peace of the Saints, tuition for the master at work. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. He writes, and thanks for the response. Absolutely. I know that you take yourself seriously. You take your questions seriously. I try to give you back what you put out.
Let's get the latest now from retired Air Vice Marshal Sean Bell. Sean, thank you so much. Good to see you again.
Kimberly.
Good afternoon. Right, let's talk about Germany. Why are they so reticent to send these tanks?
The pressure has been ramping up, hasn't it, on Germany? And the danger is it looks like they're being difficult, when actually the truth lies, it's far from the truth. The history as ever is tied up in history. At the end of the Second World War, the Allies, determined to make sure that Germany could not actually mount any further global wars, dismantled the German military, and but recognized they needed to have some defense. The Allies put military.
This guy is a clown. I'm not saying he's not knowledgeable, he's not intelligent, but he's talking BS. Firstly, he doesn't have any unique insight into Germany in as much as he's not a part of the German military forces. Furthermore, he's saying that they're bound by history, which we all know factually is not true. If that were the case, Adolf Hitler was also technically bound by history. At the end of World War I, there were major issues imposed on Germany, not only them losing part of their land, and also having certain resources extracted for repayment to certain other nations, namely France. In addition, there were limits on the size of the standing army, size of Air Force, and things like that. All of those conditions were broken by Hitler. Nobody did anything, and he carried on. And whatever limits have been put on Germany, certainly no one looks at the modern German nation state as they do the state that was known as the Nazis. And undoubtedly, I trust that they have already exceeded what would have stopped them from posing a threat to their neighbors. Now, the only thing we can rely on now is that the Germans, not being a masculine country, or what I mean is that they're not a patriarchy. They don't have that Prussian history anymore. In fact, their leader has been an unattractive woman in recent years. So in as much as that's the case, they don't have that Prussian military culture where they're ready to start seeking Lebensraum again. So this is complete silliness. Germany is positioning to take advantage of this financial opportunity, and they're biding their time so that they can also occupy a moral position when they do it. This dude is he's either not thinking well or he's lying intentionally. By the way, shout out to the ballers. Mr. Barry writes, Peace of the Saints. I'm trying to ask a question here, but YouTube won't let me send it with my super chat. My question is in the chat. I understand they have a lot of suppression here. And that's why I encourage many of you, if you can, to use Cash App. That way you cut Google out. or use PayPal. And remember that we vote not only when we cast the ballot, we vote with our dollars, we vote by where we live, we vote by the persons we choose to associate with, we vote by the persons we condemn. And so great men must take actions, great actions. Mr. Barry writes, number one, we know it's not great for women to sleep with a lot of guys. Yes, we do know that. Number two, I want to sleep with these girls, but I know that's contributing to creating women that we don't want, women with high body count. I hear the paradox that you're speaking of. Here is the reality of things. I highly doubt you're turning anyone into a harlot. So what is actually happening is that your efforts are probably not creating a higher percentage of harlots. Rather, the existing harlots are just engaging in more work, shall we say. And that is just the nature of things. In all societies, you have a number of women that they're only good for being on their back, unfortunately. And that's fine. The problem lies in when we have the women who would be good women succumbing to the errant leadership of women who are harlots and them spreading their holosophy. You see, when you have perfectly good girls following a Kim Kardashian or a Nicki Minaj or a Chrissy-Ann, I think her name is pronounced, the harlot from Baltimore that has stolen Blueface's scene in that one. Carrying on.
Bases across Germany. In fact, my first tour was on one of them at RAF Gütersloh in Germany, and the recent meeting of the world leaders was at Ramstein, a USAF military base in the middle of Germany. Of course, then the Cold War came along.
That little sidebar was completely irrelevant. Here we see the major players of the Cold War. We have Joseph Stalin on the far right. He looks quite sharp. We have Winston Churchill on the far left, and he looks quite unimpressive considering the fact that he comes from aristocratic stock. He doesn't look very aristocratic there. And then we have Roosevelt in the middle, if I'm remembering correctly. And he looks reasonably snazzy. He was a smart fellow. And so basically this guy's bringing up unrelated World War II history when in reality, these laws and these restrictions don't apply. You know, these are just words on a paper. I remind the Haitian saying, "Les constitutions, c'est papier, le bayonet, c'est fait," which is to say a constitution is paper, a bayonet is steel. And what we've seen from Putin, for example, is that it was not in line with popular opinion, the opinion expressed by the United Nations, which is really just an instrument of Israel and America. And Putin said, hey, for our own national security, we shall create a buffer zone in Ukraine rather than let NATO and the Americans take influence there. And he didn't get anyone's permission. He did what he was going to do. And if the Germans wanted to remilitarize and start bullying, they would do that irrespective of World War II history and irrespective of what anyone has to say. So this is just silliness.
And Germany found itself at the front line of that. So the Allies relented, allowed it to build up its military capability, but they were absolutely firmly only on the defense. So the German military was not allowed to collect intelligence on any of its people, was not allowed to use the military in.
This guy is spewing out historical knowledge that's completely irrelevant. I would probably want to slap him in his face if I was there. I'm like, you're trying to look smart, but you're not helping anyone with understanding. Gentleman writes, am I Zoe? No, I'm not Haitian, but I'm every human being rolled into one. Carrying on.
Internally, couldn't have nuclear weapons. And all of that was enshrined in the Constitution. Likewise, for the German population, there's support for that.
It's an interesting one. Let's talk about Russia. A politician then, also a close ally of Mr. Vladimir Putin, threatened that if the Western weapon deliveries go ahead, it's going to lead to a global catastrophe.
I hope it does, because look, you can only make so many threats, you see, and at some point you're going to have to give a demo. And that's one thing we all understand, those who have been involved in real politics. Speaking of the Germans, a great German by the name of Otto von Bismarck said that the great questions of the day will not be settled by speeches or majority votes, but by blood and iron, which is how the great question of the day has always been solved, which is to say somebody going to have to get their thug on. All this talking ain't going to get the job done. And that's one thing I remember very distinctly from the neighborhood, which is yeah, you could do all this wolfing. That's what we call it, wolfing. Oh, he just wolfing. He trying to get big with you. You can get big, but when the blade come out, or when the fist starts swinging, or somebody pull out the clapper, that's when we figure out what's what. If you keep wolfing, at some point, no one's gonna believe you. If you keep wolfing, at some point, people gonna want to see if you got a bark to go with that wolf. And here's the thing. I think the Russians know that they can only wolf so much, and they're going to have to make a very strong move to get the Western powers to stop infusing endless amounts of weaponry, mercenaries, and cash into Ukraine. Because the goal of the Western powers is essentially to exhaust Vladimir Putin. What they do understand is that Vladimir Putin is a leader in the similar style of Adolf Hitler. He's not as talented or as mesmerizing or as powerful or as forward thinking or as innovative, but he is one who knows how to lock down his country, and he's certainly ruthless and persistent. And similar to Hitler, he's going to fight until he can't fight anymore, because if he loses this war, he loses his position, because we all know historically when the United States is able to defeat you in war, or they'll try to assassinate you. If they're not able to assassinate you, if they defeat you in war, you're going to be replaced. And then they're going to pretend as though your own people decided to kill you, when really it was American agents there on the ground that armed, organized, and trained your local disaffectors, your local people who are just always unhappy about the regime. And those are the ones they'll send to kill you after they've basically beat you in the war. This is what happened to Saddam Hussein. This is what happened to Muammar Gaddafi. This is a pattern. It's a very clear pattern. Knowing that pattern, even if Putin wasn't intelligent and ruthless, I think his personality is intelligent and ruthless. And based on personality, he's going to fight to the end. But even if he wasn't one with that personality, based on observation of history, he knows he has to fight to the end, lest America will end his life. So he's fighting for his life. He's fighting for his position. And similarly with Hitler, I actually wrote a paper on this. I do know this very well. And mind you, when I was writing this paper, there was a very small number of scholars that I was able to consult with. So there are not a lot of people who know this. Anyways, I was writing a paper on the Hitler Jugend, which is like the Hitler Youth League. There was a youth league for the boys, and there was one for the girls called the Bund Deutsche Mädel. And the Bund Deutsche Mädel was basically them preparing females to carry on Aryan blood. One of their major roles was to learn how to be a wife and mother. This is a great society in that regard. The boys were learning how to be great soldiers and leaders. And when the German army was exhausted, the Hitler Jugend, who had grown up being militarized and grown up being taught to be hard, they also used to throw hands, you dig? And there were a number of schools. There was the Napola school, there was the Hitler school, there was all these different kinds of schools that the boys would go to engage in various types of training, whether it's a mindset, emotional intelligence, military affairs, etc. And so once the actual standing army was exhausted due to the two-front war, Hitler then enlisted the boys, and he sent all the boys in there to get it in. And look, one thing you got to respect about them German boys is they were real wolves. You heard me? And that's why I say shout out to the assassin savages that's ready to be on go. You dig? And these boys were on go. When Hitler said, let's go, it wasn't a situation to where they said, oh, I'm so young, I don't want to die. It was a situation to where these boys said, yes, I've been waiting on this. It was like going to the club. You heard me? It was like going to a party because they've been trained up for this. It was like, it's finally showtime. Let's work. And that's how it got to be. And that's how all of the realist societies were. You know, the Zulus in South Africa, the Spartans in Greece. That's how the society should be raised. Yeah, you fight to the last one. And you do that for honor and for soil. Now, in this case, Hitler wasn't trying to defend his soil. He was trying to take other people's soil, and that's wicked. But that's essentially what's going to happen in the Russian case. I don't think Russians have had their nationalism driven as well as the Hitler era did, because they had superior propaganda. And they were also coming out of World War II, which was tremendous economic depression, and they felt as though the world was against them. But in the case of the Russians, you don't have that exact same situation, but you did have the dissolution of the former Soviet Union, and you did have the feeling that the world was against you, namely NATO, the Americans, and of course, Israel. When I say Israel, I'm just speaking of them as the country that operates America. So anyways, the Russians will fight to the last man. They are able to use some modern strategies that the Nazis couldn't use, such as hiring private paramilitary. I think it's called the Wagner Group that they utilize, as well as other mercenaries. And this is being done on both sides. Although the West pretends it's only the Russians are doing it, we know that's not true, because with the Russians having superior population, Ukraine being a small country that's both numerically inferior in terms of population, but also in terms of weaponry, the Ukrainians would be literally wiped out. It'd damn near be a genocide if only the Ukrainians were fighting. We have Americans there fighting. We have a legion of foreigners. One of them might go by the name the Legion. I ain't gonna point no fingers, France. I ain't gonna point no fingers. You have African mercenaries. You have all kinds of mercenaries that are there in Ukraine fighting. Anyways, carrying on. May I acknowledge Walton, he writes, do you read, write, and recite these quotes to remember? No, some things just stick to your rib because they're so real. You know, if I'm reading a book, like when I was reading The Art of War, I did underline and reread and recite The Art of War, and I have committed the whole thing to memory. But some quotations you come across, like the one by Otto von Bismarck, is just so real that it's emblazoned in the mind. You know, for me, it's hard to forget because it's so true. It points to the reality that democracy is BS, you know what I'm saying? And the real business gets done when the bloodshed occurs. Because just think of it like this, for example. Look at Destiny, or excuse me, look at Molestiny and look at The Saint. We're diametrically opposed. Like, he's on record speaking in favor of pedophilia. I'm on record saying that this is one of the greatest evils in the society, something I truly hate. He's on record saying that he's engaged in homosexual behavior with other males. I'm on record pointing out that there are major health issues with this kind of behavior, not only mental health, but also physical health. We are in diametrically opposed positions, and there can be no reconciliation. In as much as that's the case, there won't be any votes. You're going to have to settle the great questions of the day with blood and steel. It just is what it is. And that's because you're dealing with evil persons, right? Like, Hitler was an evil character. You weren't about to negotiate with Hitler. He's evil. You weren't about to compromise with bruh. He's pursuing an evil outcome. So any compromise will be a compromise with the devil. In as much as that's the case, you got to take him out. May I acknowledge Bugs Moran? He writes, major game, and people don't even realize how much game. You heard me? Like, I can talk a dissertation to you. People don't even realize the level, man. But we gonna give it to you anyways, man. We got a link that was shared from the Saint who came in by PayPal earlier. Let's just dip onto that real quick. Oh, actually, I think I saw this one. I think we did go through this one, so do forgive me. Yeah, this was the one about the shooting. Yep, we already hit that one. Thank you for the support there, Saint. Back to Ukraine war.
That's what he said. I mean, what do you make of that sort of rhetoric?
The Putin ally concerned is Vyacheslav Volodin here. He's the Speaker of the lower house in Russia. Very threatening rhetoric. But to be brutally honest, the last few days we've seen lots of this sort of rhetoric, all obliquely referring to potential nuclear threats. The irony.
The real question for me is, who would Russia hit with the nuclear missile? That's really what I would ask myself. And one thing we know is that they're not going to hit the United States with it, because the United States probably has some level of technology that would allow a significant counterstrike. And so if I were the Russians, I would be saying, number one, I for sure am going to hit somebody with a nuke. America did it. They got away with it. They hit the Japanese with the nuke, and that basically ended things. And I think I'll do a replay on that scenario. So I'm going to hit somebody with a nuke. I'm not going to hit America because they can defend themselves really well. But I do want to hit one of these countries on the periphery, one of these countries that are not as sophisticated as America. They might be financially or militarily supporting Ukraine, and they're not a part of NATO. So if there isn't a country that fits that description, I'll probably go ahead and hit Ukraine with the nuke. You feel me? The parts that I'm not occupying, a small nuke, just to say, hey, this is a demo. This is an example. And if you guys do anything else, we're ready for all out nuclear warfare. And so, try us. We have just demonstrated that we're at least a little bit crazy. So go ahead and try us. And that's what I would do. But truth be told, I think Putin bungled this thing because at the very beginning, when he first started this special military operation in Ukraine, he was too soft-handed. You should have went for total annihilation and obliteration of the Ukrainian forces, which is to say you should have took an ultra heavy hand. You should have hit the ant with a hammer, and you would have learned best from Adolf Hitler, who utilized a strategy called blitzkrieg. And that's why their successes and their advances were so rapid. And you want to see a historical example, look at how they did Poland. Did Poland dirty as hell. And that's how Ukraine should have been done. Now Putin has gotten himself into a situation to where he played a little soft, and people are like, okay, well, we gonna play with you if that's how you're gonna play. Now, if Putin would have went in and just viciously obliterated significant portions of the Ukrainian military as well as their civilian population, even if it was a war crime, they're not a part of NATO. People would have condemned him, but they would have said, okay, I see what he's on. We're going to stay back, because if he's willing to do that to Ukraine low-key for no good reason, I'm sure he'd press the button on us if we're going to pose a real threat. And Henry Kissinger speaks to this mad dog strategy, which is the idea that you essentially have to scare the opponent and let them know that you're unpredictable and you're willing to do anything. And this is one thing that came naturally to me living in a ghetto around people who actually are mentally unwell and they're willing to do anything. And one thing I learned is that you got to be willing to do anything, or else you ain't gonna never be safe. You hear me? You ain't gonna never be able to thrive. So you got to match that craziness. And I seek to exceed it. I pride myself on my ruthlessness. I really do. And I also pride myself on not letting anything go. So if anyone's ever had a beef with me, I hope you know that eventually I will come for you. And I will come for everything you love in real life. Shout out to Bugs. He writes, Blitzkrieg, indeed. Man, Putin needs to be taking notes. You heard me? If I was head of Putin's United Military Forces, we did this. Look, right now, we wouldn't have been at war. Right now, we would have been trying to figure out how do we get re-included into the international community after we did what we did. You feel me? Nah, war would have been over and nobody would have wanted smoke.
Here, of course, is that Russia is quite happy to threaten and invade another country, but as soon as it feels threatened, it starts to wail and moan about it. The two main reasons why this rhetoric, though, is ramped up is, one, Russia recognizes that tanks could have a decisive military capability in the war, particularly Western tanks could prove decisive. And secondly, they recognize the constitutional challenge that Germany currently faces, and by ramping up the rhetoric, making it even more difficult for Germany to side and support the deployment of tanks.
Now, Russia's also said that
it's ironic. This guy who's supposed to be an expert, now I just want to slap him in the face. I think he's an idiot. Because why is he being consulted and I'm not being consulted when his information is not very insightful? If he's bringing up all this history, let's bring up the relevant history. We're talking about tanks here. Let's talk about tanks. Yes, tanks have historically been very relevant, particularly between these two countries. There was a tank, a Panzer, that we should probably be referencing at this time. And what we should know is that the Germans historically have made good tanks. And in fact, the Soviet Union was able to pump out higher numbers of tanks, but they were not as good quality as the German tanks. The only reason that the Soviets, in league with the British and in league with the Americans, were able to eventually overcome Germany, because Germany had superior weapons and a lot of things superior, but it's because of their productivity. And what I mean is this: for one excellent German tank, the Russians were able to churn out 3 inferior tanks, but due to the overproduction, they were able to win through the force of numbers. And the reason America has been so effective in war in general, particularly in the World War II scenario, is because we had a strong consumer economy, and we took our consumer industries and turned them into war industries, and we're able to churn out a lot of weaponry. Now, that'll probably not favor us this time around because we've had bad leadership and we've given our heavy industry capacity and a lot of consumer capacity to China. And that's why everything you see in America says made in China. But here's the kicker: everything you see everywhere says made in China. If you're in Ethiopia, South Africa, and various other places, it says made in China. And that was a major blunder on the part of American and Western leadership. These people are imbeciles. I kid you not. It's a real thing, stupidity. But the point is that tanks will be a factor. And if Putin is wise and he really wants to win, if I were him, I wouldn't talk. I would say, you know what, we need to attack somebody. We got to attack somebody. And if I really don't want to pop off the real war with America, I'm not going to attack a NATO ally. I'm going to attack Ukraine with a small nuke just to say, hey, here's a demo. But more importantly, understand this. If it were me, I would attack a NATO country. And I would attack a NATO country who's giving the highest amount of capital or the highest amount of weapons. I would attack the NATO country that's either doing that and can't counterstrike, which could be Germany due to some of the limitations. I don't know. I don't know what their nuclear capacity really is. I don't know what their counterstriking capacity really is. But I would attack a NATO country and then say, dare me to push the nuclear button, I'll do it. And I think that the international community, and especially the citizens of the world, would understand, like, no, we don't want to go into nuclear war, because with the increasing effeminization of global populations, they don't want smoke. They ain't savages. They don't want war. Definitely not nuclear war. When it becomes real that they can die, then they're going to say, you know what have the Ukrainians done for us? When people start realizing that they can get hit with a nuclear bomb, not just Ukraine, then they're going to start putting pressure on their politicians to chill. And that's what Putin really needs, because otherwise he's going to have his country bankrupted, and he's going to have his country exhausted. He's going to have his young men go to their demise. I hear, and we don't know how reliable the figures are, but I hear that Russia's already lost 100,000 troops. Who knows what's real? Hef writes, I hope you get more credit for your work sooner than later. I appreciate that. I find it funny how all of a sudden everyone is realizing how weird Adam 22 is. Oh, man. And you'll find that I've been at the root of spreading a lot of ideas. And unlike a lot of these goofballs on the internet, they learn from the internet and from the doings of social media people. I learn from the doings of statesmen. You know, I study propaganda from, Joseph Goebbels. You dig? These guys are studying marketing from Seth Godin. It's different levels out here. So yeah, people start repeating the things that I said because I'm your favorite YouTuber's favorite YouTuber. So this is what happens. I'll say something, or I'll start putting out a message, and then a bigger YouTuber who watches me quietly will take it. It'll be implanted in his head because it makes sense, and then they'll eventually push it out. And then over time, as they say, every drop wears away a stone. And in time, people will realize the truth, because my message is so potent because it involves the truth. Everything that I'm saying about these people can be documented. And thank you very much for that acknowledgement. I do appreciate it. Carrying on.
Well, it's announced this major long-term expansion to its armed forces. What do you make of that?
That was Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu.
Shout out to the Stoner family. Orion comes in, he writes, peace to the saints. Thanks for the game. My pleasure. Thank you for the support, Saint. Wishing your whole family much peace and blessings and safety and prosperity. Mr. Carter writes, where can I get Conference 2 footage? Do I have to get the bundle of 1 and 2 on thesassin.com? I tried Marquettism and the capture is not working. Okay, so do this, Andre. If you just want Conference 2, if you just send me an email to marquetteb@gmail.com, the same email address for the PayPal, and just say, hey, I'd like to purchase Conference 2 footage, which costs this much on Marquettism. And then you can send that through PayPal, and then we'll send you back the footage. Thank you for that question. And my acknowledgement to you for focusing on your own education and your own success. That is wise.
Announcing a 3-year, shown here, 3-year plan, going up to 1.5 million. It's even bigger expansion than before, another 11% bigger. And all the rhetoric was around an increased threat from the West. They're also looking at putting a new army corps up in Karelia there, just off the side of Finland, almost certainly a direct response to Finland acceding to NATO membership and responding to that threat. More concerning, though, is...
Yeah, let's go back and hear a little bit about what he's saying. This is really worth thinking about. So let me maximize this for you.
Going up to 1.5 million. It's even bigger expansion than before.
of that? It's it's announced this major long-term expansion to its armed forces. What do you make of that?
That was Defence Minister Sergei Shoigu announcing a three-year, shown here, three-year plan, going up to 1.5 million. It's even bigger expansion than before, another 11% bigger. And all the rhetoric was around an increased threat from the West. They're also looking at putting a new arm.
So that is reasonable rhetoric. We have seen increased threat from the West. We've seen America try to bring more countries into NATO, which is essentially we're in a new Cold War. And Russia should be more nervous because when the last Cold War occurred, it was the Soviet Union, which Russia had many other satellite states, Uzbekistan and all these other random countries, which gave them a buffer, gave them more resources, more population to draw up an army from. And they were better positioned to be strong and contend with an America. Whereas now that's not the case. And so I respect them for, making the strong go to protect their sovereignty and their borders. So this makes perfect sense. They absolutely should be doing this. Sometimes you have to take this with a grain of salt because they might announce a 3-year plan, but they might not have the personnel or the financial resources to execute on the 3-year plan because right now they're being bled dry. But also, here's a difference. When America defeated the Russians in the first Cold War, basically Gorbachev gave up due to pressure put on him by Kissinger and Reagan and all of these folks. That was a time when America was thriving and didn't have fill-in-the-blank $1 trillion of debt. So just as we exhaust them, the Russians, we also exhaust ourselves. There you go. So that's something to be aware of. But let's hear about the plans.
Army corps up in Karelia there, just off the side of Finland, almost certainly a direct response to Finland acceding to NATO membership and responding to that threat. More concerning, though, is Russia's also not just about people, it's also mobilizing its defense industry. Putin has been talking to some of the defense industry leaders, trying to get them onto a war footing with a long-term strategy. The real question from my perspective is
I don't believe what he's saying. He's suggesting as though Putin is just now starting these kind of conversations with the folks in heavy industry. That's impossible. There's probably been conversations and alignment going on for a long time. Putin's no fool. He comes from the KGB. He knows the importance of the security apparatus in that country, not only in terms of maintaining equanimity among the citizens, but also protecting from outside threats. So I don't think he's just getting alignment with heavy industry. I think there's been alignment, and every government, especially those that are authoritarian, have close ties with those who produce weaponry. And in the case of Russia, I'm sure the state has tremendous control in this situation. So though it might be a private company, it's still state controlled after all. This is Russia. These are the folks who came out of the Soviet Union, this school of thinking. And mind you, you look at modern China. Modern China was created by the Soviet Union, in case you didn't know. So this authoritarian lineage, there's no way there's significant separation between heavy industry and the Russian government. I mean, this is just silliness what this fella is saying.
What's the West's response to this? Up till now, the West has largely been providing what's available in military support rather than what's needed. And raiding the sort of West's war chests has served us reasonably well for a year, but it's unlikely to prove a really good match for Putin.
So this guy is correct in that the Western powers, if you will, they've been giving what's available. But they never intended to win the war. You see, what they've intended to do is to exhaust Russia. They're in a protracted war. They know that Russia must win and will win the war. And the good thing for, say, an America or a United Kingdom is that they're not suffering any deaths on their side. The deaths are being suffered by the Ukrainians. So it's like they get to play war games without the kind of suffering that's going to cause the American populace to want to pull out of the war. You know, the kind of suffering that had Americans coming back from Iraq, missing limbs due to IEDs and things like that. That's what basically sapped the American will to fight. That's what we've been able to avoid because we're fighting using Ukrainian fighters and other mercenaries, etc. That's smart stuff. I do also want to really quickly point out a few things to you all, just that are kind of surrounding the news reporting here, and then we're going to get onto the Andrew Tate, the latest on the Andrew Tate case. And of course, right now, send in your thoughts, questions, comments as I transition, and know that this will go on as long or as short as you all like. And I want to thank those of you who are a part of the family at patreon.com/Saint in the Center, as well as those who support the work on a regular basis. You are appreciated. So this is on the Russia-Ukraine war. Number one, I find it comical that they're including things that are irrelevant in the reporting. So for example, you see the heading here, it says Russia-Ukraine war. So I'm going to enlarge that for you. It says Russia-Ukraine war, right? That's the heading. Then you scroll down and you see this about the helicopter crash. Well, the helicopter crash has nothing to do with the Russia-Ukraine war. So this is a clear effort by the propagandists to associate anything bad occurring in Ukraine with Russia as the devil creating the problem, which just isn't true. So any sob story that can be manufactured is going to be manufactured as long as it's at the expense of Russia. Germany won't block Poland giving Ukraine tanks. So I think it's curious that Poland's getting involved in this effort. I've been to Poland. I am a fan of the culture there. I respect that they're real nationalists. You would think they'd want to stay out of this, especially because Poland's never really been one of the wealthier European countries. They've never been a European power during any era I can think of. And I've studied reasonably well the history there, or rather European history. I've never really heard of Poland being a great power. Beautiful women, good banking system, but they're not a power and they don't have extra money to spare. So let's see what kind of idiocy is potentially going to occur in the Polish situation. Germany won't block Poland giving Ukraine tanks. German government will not object if Poland decides to send Leopard 2 battle tanks to Ukraine. Germany's top diplomat said. German foreign minister, blah, 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 blah. Ukraine supporters pledge billions of dollars in military aid. Yep. Now notice it's not stating what, oh, here we go. Polish prime minister said that if the fellow NATO and European Union member did not consent to transferring the tanks, his country was prepared to build a smaller coalition of countries that would send theirs anyways. I think this is a major misstep. I don't respect it. I don't like it. And I don't think that he's prioritizing the Poles first. If you're the leader of Poland, you need to make sure that the Polish people are straight. And truth be told, they're not straight. Poland is not doing very well. I think there's a lot that the Polish people deserve. Frankly, my opinion, their quality of life is not very good. Last time I was there in the capital city, it's reasonably clean. It's reasonably modern. But if you're in a place that's middle class, like a middle class accommodation, condo, apartment, they don't even have air conditioning. They don't have central air conditioning. This is a basic. Central air conditioning is a basic. I'm in South Africa. They have central air conditioning. I mean, come on. What are we talking about? European country doesn't have central air conditioning on average. It's ridiculous. Shout out to Mr. Steele supporting the work in a real way. Writes, tuition, peace to the saints. Appreciate you. Carrying on. Another article writes, let's see if anything else is relevant here. Yes, this is the one I really wanted to talk to you about. Ex-SEAL dies in Ukraine. 6th known American killed in war. This is really important because the Americans, I got to share the correct screen. This is really important because the Americans have been lying, saying that they're not directly involved in the conflict. Now, what's happening is that you have a number of Americans who are there fighting or more importantly, training Ukrainian forces. Now, in my opinion, if you have a backward army like the Ukrainian army that is not very well battle tested, and you send in some of the best military advisors and trainers in the world, the Americans, although we haven't been able to win wars in the last 5 occasions. But anyways, you send in the Americans and give them training, that's direct support. I mean, that's the kind of thing that the Ukrainian leadership would do themselves if they had the capacity, the skills, and the know-how. So I think that's a really dirty thing. This is a dirty war. And in addition, you also have military assets from America that were trained in America, probably as well armed in America. They're there in Ukraine, and they're fighting on behalf of the Ukrainians. And you'd have to ask, well, where'd they get their weaponry? Were they able to exit America with military-grade weapons? This doesn't make any sense now, does it? So it lets you know there's some lies going on. And let's just check out this article if you don't mind, if you'd like to kind of get a sense of the nature of the lies that are being passed off to you. And shout out to Andre. He just purchased the Conference 2 footage. And as soon as we get off of this live session, we'll get that sent over to you. So into the lies. Ex-SEAL dies in Ukraine. 6th known American killed in war. These are just the confirmed dead Americans. So to have an estimate of who's over there, why they're over there, what they're doing, we really don't know. A former U.S. Navy SEAL who went AWOL in 2019 was killed this week in Ukraine. Daniel Swift, who was first-class petty officer, was injured in fill-in-the-blank city, died of his wounds. Now, you would have to ask yourself, how do you get over there with weapons? Like, how'd you leave America and go that far with weaponry? That's number one. Number two, did he arrive in Ukraine and receive weapons from someone? If so, that kind of an interaction or that kind of a connection would have to be facilitated. Like if Marquette Devon Burton said, hey, I want to go fight on behalf of Ukraine, and somehow I found a way into Ukraine, which is an open war zone, how would I know where to find the person who's going to arm me? These are clear lies. If you believe this, you're stupid. If you believe this, you're misinformed. Let's just say that. I'm not going to read this article because it's filled with lies and propaganda. It just is what it is. We live in a dishonest world, and we are in revolutionary times. That's just all there is to that. That's all that can be said about that. There's more propaganda about disputing about sending tanks to Ukraine. And when you see things like this in the news, what I believe is that the warlords, which is most of what the West is, they're warlords, they're profiteers, they're those who engage the military-industrial complex. When they are pretending as though there's a stalemate of should we send German tanks into Ukraine, what they're really probably doing is testing to see what the popular opinion is among the citizens of the world, if we're willing to allow this. And after COVID, we find that the citizens of the world will allow a great many things that are not quite right. Social media report anti-aircraft systems placed in Moscow. Social media report, that's weird. Okay. CIA director visits Kiev. Look, if I was Russia, I would just say America's in the war. I'm gonna make an attack on a NATO ally and let them know that if you guys keep this up, we're going nuclear, and we're just going to fight to the last bullet. I think Putin, if he doesn't do this really soon, he's going to lose. And if he does lose, he deserved to lose because he didn't play his hand right. He had the opportunity to win, that's for sure. Mr. Analysis writes, you are intelligent, but that's only because you have lots of experience and traveled plenty. You give good insight and advice too, but you are successful only because of your choices you made. Humble yourself. I don't even know what that means. That's very strange. That's really strange. That's very strange. Anyways, thank you for the support. Carrying on. A CIA director visits Kiev. That's terrible. $2.5 billion aid sends strikers, but no tanks to Ukraine. That's a lot of aid, $2.5 billion. I mean, it almost makes you say, wow, Russia, they are some beasts, because they're putting their bankroll up against the whole world's bankroll right now, and they're still winning. They're actually winning right now. So we do have to acknowledge that. But if they really want to win in a decisive way and time is against the Russians, it's against the Ukrainians, but no one really cares about the Ukrainians. Let's be honest about that part. No one actually cares about the Ukrainians. The truth is, the Russians need to a sooner end to this thing, and they need to press a button. That's what it comes down to. It's funny how many different articles you'll see that talk about the German tanks situation. I think they're warming up the public for this possibility. Russia and China hold naval drills off of South Africa. Okay, that's interesting. Now, the funny thing is I'm in South Africa right now. Nobody's mentioned it. No one really cares. And I might be tempted to eventually do a live session on the African mentality, if you will, which is quite despicable. We'll see if I end up doing it. I try not to, say negative things about entire peoples, but the mentality is quite despicable. They should want better things for themselves. The standards are low around the world among all peoples, but the African situation is quite bad. Okay. All right, cool. So that's about it on that one. Now let's go to a couple other pieces. Actually, let's get to the Tate real quick. Let's get to the Tate. Oh, and we also have Alec Baldwin too. Wow, that's another one. Here we go. Romanian judge grants a 30-day. I don't know why they use the term grant. It almost sounds like it's a good thing when it's not, especially not if you're the one in jail. Romanian judge grants 30-day extension of Tate detention. The weird thing is I wonder if this, like when this photo is from or what it's from, because it looks like his hair looks like he just left Turkey after getting like hair plugs. It doesn't quite look right. So I don't think this is like a recent photo. I think they're just trying to find a photo of him looking angry or negative. Bucharest, a judge in Romania has granted a request to extend another 30 days the arrest of Andrew Tate. It's unfortunate. Tate, 36, a British citizen, a British and U.S. citizen who has 4.7 million followers. Yes, we know all this. Ramona Bola, a spokesperson for Romania's anti-organized crime agency, told the Associated Press that prosecutors requested another 30-day extension. See, one thing I think is ridiculous, and certainly the Romanian justice system probably has different structures than the Americans, but generally when you're going through trial and you're presumed innocent, there's no reason not to let the person out when they're not a significant flight risk. Perhaps Marquette Devon Burton could fly to Sudan and not be recognized, but Andrew Tate can't go anywhere without being recognized. He's not a flight risk, and hence there's no need to keep someone who's potentially innocent in a Romanian jail. This is clearly a political thing, and I don't think his crimes are heinous or well evidenced that it warrants him being locked up on a continuous basis. So this is clearly a political effort on the basis of Romania. They're under pressure. And I think they're trying to create some kind of reputation that they're serious about this trafficking thing, even if it's at the expense of an individual. And I want you to understand that historically, this has been the case with governments, is that they'll sacrifice an individual because these political actors are dirtbags. And this is the same thing during the McCarthy era with the Red Terror. It's like they would accuse people of being communists who weren't communists just to show that they were being tough on communists. And that's the same kind of behavior we're seeing here. The pendulum has swung too far. And I think that is why eventually we'll see the saints rise up and we'll be able to correct things, because even the non-believers, the people who are deaf, dumb, and blind, even they will eventually like, hey, this stuff is ridiculous. Like, what is alimony anyways? None of this makes sense. And we'll eventually get this stuff fixed. The judge's decision at the Bucharest tribunal came after all four lost an appeal. Goodness, everybody lost the appeal last week against the judge's December 30th ruling to extend their arrest from 24 hours to 30 days. The Tates are likely to appeal Friday's extension. Yes, they're going to appeal it, but it doesn't look like they have any friends within the Romanian establishment anymore. Gliga, a lawyer for the Tate brothers, said that He considered the ruling totally unjustified, and I tend to agree objectively. And one thing I'd like to point out to you guys, because I do travel widely and I travel to curious places that really no one goes, and every now and then I find myself around people who really shouldn't know the name Andrew Tate. People here in South Africa, random people from the Xhosa tribe, random Zulus, random colored people, older people, young people, people from Albania. Everyone knows Andrew Tate, but they don't know Andrew Tate. What I mean is this. They know the name. They know that he's been accused of heinous crimes against women. They know him to be a misogynist, but they couldn't tell you what the crimes are. They couldn't tell you who the victims are. They couldn't tell you what the evidence are, yet they feel certain. And this is the nature of the average person, which is that they're brain dead and they're easily influenced. This is precisely why we have to unseat the wicked governments around the world, because the propaganda works so effectively. I mean, we all have a family member that hates Trump, but couldn't tell you exactly what he's done to make them hate him, right? Human beings are emotional and foolish. And basically, Andrew Tate is beyond, his reputation is beyond being salvaged because people have such high levels of certainty, even though they have such low levels of information. And he's fighting up against public sentiment, which is something he was unlikely to beat. Shout out to Mr. Rooks, sending tuition rights peace to the saints. Appreciate you. Thank you to those supporting the work. Saints, I'll give you a little bit of time to send in questions or comments, URLs, or other things as we wind down. Quote, only an hour ago, the session was closed and the file has 20 volumes. I find it hard to believe that someone has the physical capacity to study the file in such a short time, as only yesterday it reached the tribunal. And what the attorney is basically suggesting is that there's a dog and pony show. There's no real justice occurring because he provided a very lengthy document, and the document was too long for it to have been adequately reviewed by the persons in charge of deciding on if Tate would be able to walk out or remain in custody. And so that decision was not based on the document or the evidence or on justice, but rather based again on public sentiment and, more importantly, the goals of the Romanian government in terms of positioning themselves as a government tough on organized crime and tough on trafficking, which in reality, they're probably not. But hey, what can you do? Appearances are important. Image is everything, right? A post on Andrew Tate's Twitter account read, quote, I'm in detention and they look for evidence. As they look for evidence they will never find because we are not guilty. I think he probably would have been better using the formulation of innocent rather than not guilty. They have and will continue to ignore and throw away any and all testimony or hard evidence that we are innocent, end quote. And he carries on with more tweets, but what I tend to think is silence is sometimes golden. And with these tweets, I think he's just further angering the government there in Bucharest. And he's perhaps embarrassing them and perhaps, poking fun at them and challenging them. And I think these persons, of course, they're looking at you as though you're an arrogant, wealthy guy with 8 supercars and 5 properties and a bunch of women. And you're living a life that they can't imagine. They really can't even imagine the life you've lived. And they're jealous. And, these are government employees who are making a small amount of money. And they hate your guts. And every tweet you make makes them hate your guts even more. And so you're just creating a worse situation for yourself. So if I were Tate, I'd probably stop tweeting, but I do understand the stress of being locked up and being in a situation wherein you feel you want a voice and you're being wronged. And I get that, but I think a good lawyer would tell him, hey, Tate, why don't you be silent? We need you to have a positive image at this time. And so I don't think he's going to be able to change the public opinion about him via Twitter. Because everyone's in an echo chamber. The people who love him to death. They probably ain't gonna do anything on his behalf. And the people who don't like him are convinced of their position and it won't change. So he really is probably hurting himself with his tweets. Saints, I appreciate the support. Let us end this with our tradition, the Creed of Assassin. Repeat after me with full conviction, knowing this is true of you, the Creed of the Assassin. I'm going to be who I truly am because I am remarkable. And I'm going to strive every moment to show the greatest part of who I am. Until next time, peace to the saints.